Please be seated. So then, this is the first Sunday we've come together after that incredible journey of Lent and Holy Week, weeks hallmarked by solemn, thoughtful observance, a deep reverence for God's saving grace, and that climatic celebration of the resurrection that we experienced last week. What we witnessed this year, as we do every single year, is the magnificent redeeming act of Christ, welcoming anew in each of our lives. And for nearly 2 centuries, for nearly 2 millennia, we have marked this holy time from the apostles right through to us today. Now, it's fair to say that the pomp, the ceremonies, the bells, if we have them, and the colour sometimes overshadow that deep significance of this time in one respect. For Easter is not an occasion, it's a new awakening, a new call, a new attitude, a new relationship, a new start, a period of time that heralds in a significant change in people that must continue forward, something that is dynamic, always at work, not static, not stale. And so we do not refer to Easter as a service on any particular day, but as a season. And here we encounter scriptures that speak to the future that Jesus came to bring about, and importantly, the response from his disciples in living out and continuing Christ's ministry to all. And that's important because we are the new disciples, and it's up to us to continue the work that was started by those disciples nearly 2 millennia ago. So in our readings, we're now starting this season, I suppose we can call it, of the resurrection. And I thought it appropriate, seeing it's the first Sunday that we're going to be talking about them, just to have a brief look at the resurrection appearances in general, and then to look at our friend Thomas more specifically. So we're now in that period of the resurrection. And recorded in the Gospels, there are 12, and sometimes regarded as 13 different appearances. And why I sometimes say 13 is because depending on which commentator you read, some people regard when Paul saw that bright light and heard the voice of Jesus on that Damascus road. Some people regard that as one of the resurrection appearances, and some people say that was really something different. So it's up to you to decide what you prefer. So the first appearances had been made to Mary Magdalene on that first Easter morning, and the last being to the 11 disciples at Jesus' ascension. And on one occasion he appeared to at least 500 people. And what was this resurrected Jesus like? Well, he could be felt. We're going to hear this morning that Thomas was able to feel the wounds in his hands and put his hand into the wound from the spear. On one occasion he was hungry and he was given fish to eat. So in one sense he was very physically present. But on the other hand, Jesus was able to appear among his disciples when they were inside a locked room. So there seemed to have been this balance between physical and spiritual. So our main question, and I think it would be unnatural if at some stage of our Christian journey we didn't ask this question. And the question we would ask is, well, did this resurrection really happen? Did Jesus really come and appear to people? Was it perhaps just made up? Did it ever happen? Was it perhaps mass hallucination that people just dreamed through it? And there are perhaps 4 areas that we can look at to see, well, was this really a real occasion? And there are probably more, but I'm just looking at 4. So these appearances, firstly, appeared in all 4 Gospels. So it didn't just appear in one, it appeared in all 4, in different forms, but they're there. And also by Luke in his book of Acts, and by Paul in his letter to the Corinthians. So it's well written about it. The second point is that it wasn't a one-time event, but something that was witnessed by many over a 40-day period. So it wasn't just a once-off that was seen by 1 or 2 people. It was a repeated event that was seen on several occasions, on many occasions, by many, many people. The third point is that Jesus' appearances were very, very physical. Unlike that appearance to Paul on the Damascus Road, Jesus could be physically felt, and he ate fish, very real human characteristics. And the fourth point, and this is a wonderful point to me, is that it's always interesting to go to writers beyond the Christian writers and see what the non-Christian writers had to say. And the one that I like the best is Josephus, and he was a first century Jewish writer, so he had nothing to gain by writing what he wrote. He wrote because he believed that this was what happened. So this is what Josephus wrote. At this time there was a wise man who was called Jesus, and his conduct was good, and he was known to be virtuous. And many people from among the Jews and other nations became his disciples. Pilate condemned him to be crucified and to die, and those who had become his disciples did not abandon his discipleship. They reported that he had appeared to them 3 days after his crucifixion, and that he was alive. Accordingly, he was perhaps the Messiah, concerning whom the prophets have recounted wonders. And that's from the 1st century. So I think that can give us some confidence that yes, this really did happen. So what can be found from these appearances? Well, actually quite a lot, but to simplify, we see that in Jesus' post-resurrection appearances, we see a number of points. For a start, we know from Jesus that he always turns things upside down. What would be expected to be natural, he turns upside down. And that's the very first thing he does in his resurrection. Normally, you would have thought that his first appearance would have been to men. You would have thought that perhaps it would have been to the disciples, perhaps it would have been to the Jewish or the Roman authorities. But no, it's to a group of women, which today we say, well, what's unusual about that? But at the time, that would have been very, very unusual. Second, the resurrection appearances turned some skeptics into believers. And we think of Thomas and Paul in this example. Remember, Paul was this man who was persecuting Christians, and with that encounter on the Damascus road, he became this wonderful Christian person, as he called himself, the apostle to the Greeks, mainly. Third point was not a one-time event, but witnessed by many. And fourth, it was publicly seen by multiple people, which actually then dispels any rumours of hallucinations. Right, 1 or 2 people can have an hallucination, but 500, more than 500, probably not. And those who were weak became strong in their faith after Jesus was risen. We think of Peter, who denied Christ, and yet he became that very first bishop of Rome. Again, we think of Paul, we think of many of the disciples trembling in that room, expecting the door to be broken down any second, and Jesus comes and stands amongst them. I believe that Jesus appeared on many other occasions during that period. We only know about the appearances that were recorded, but possibly many more. The fact that Jesus appeared after his resurrection, as he did, verifies that Jesus had indeed defeated death. And this is one of the key elements of the cross on that Thursday. Jesus died, but he defeated death. He overcame death, and that's an important thing. And this is something that we shouldn't only celebrate on the Easter season, but we should celebrate that every single day of the year. And so on to Thomas. So we know the story, we heard it. Thomas wasn't there, he was away, we don't know where. The other disciples saw Jesus, they tell Thomas about it, and Thomas says, please, you really expect me to believe that? Now, for many years, I gave classes in astronomy to the Gifted Child Centre. And of course, every time I would have children saying, do I believe that there are aliens, that there are little green men, that there are extraterrestrials? And my answer was always, that I won't discount it. It could happen. And we know at the moment they're busy looking for life again on Mars with their recent rover. But I always ended by saying, I have an open mind to it, but I will believe it when I see it. And that's exactly what Thomas said. I will believe it when I see it. So we read in verse 21 and 23 of chapter 20 in John's Gospel, Jesus said to them, "Peace be with you, as the Father has sent me, so I send you." And when he said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven them. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." Breathe on them. Or in Hebrew it's called Ruach, the Ruach of God. And we see this happening on a few occasions. We see in Genesis how God breathed over the waters and life happened. We see in that account of Adam how God breathed life into Adam. And in 40 days we're going to be on the day of Pentecost. And we'll see again how there was this breath, this sound of the wind that came in that fortified the disciples. So the very important aspect, that breath of God, the Ruach of God. Peace be with you. So Jesus is showing his compassion. He does not condemn Thomas. He doesn't say, "Well, you're useless, you didn't believe in me, go away." He didn't condemn him. He understands that Thomas needs something concrete, something real. Then he said to Thomas, "Put your fingers here and see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it in my side. Do not doubt, but believe." So Jesus is inviting Thomas to move from unbelief to belief. And the minute that he is able to do that, Thomas is transformed. Straight away he says, "My Lord and my God." So Thomas believes immediately, once he has witnessed the real. Jesus then said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe. Hey, that's us. That's us. We haven't been able to feel the spear mark in Jesus' side. We haven't been able to feel those nail marks in his hands, yet we believe. We are blessed. Isn't that wonderful? I always feel sorry for Thomas. Poor Thomas. Every year, regular as clockwork, the week after Easter, we hammer Thomas, and forever he has the label of doubting Thomas. But I like Thomas. To me, Thomas is real. We can all identify with him because there is much about faith that is simply a mystery. We do not fully understand. We simply believe because we have faith. God realizes that humans need something concrete. And we see that in our sacraments, particularly the sacraments of the Eucharist and of baptism. What's our definition of a sacrament? Well, it's an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace. And we have the outward signs in baptism of the water and the oil, the Eucharist of the bread and the wine. We've got something that we can hold, that we can touch. In the case of the bread and the wine, we can actually taste. So we have something concrete. And he realizes that Thomas needed something concrete, and we need something concrete. So by recounting the Thomas episode, John, the Apostle John, explains that the risen Lord lives a life that escapes our own senses, a life that we cannot see or touch, and that can only be an object of faith. So go ahead and doubt. Is there anything wrong with doubting? Well, I think if there was,